Hey guys, welcome back to Dojo On-Chained. Let's check out our two portfolios, the Cryptocurrency Innovation and Blue Chip Index, see how their performance has fared since the last update against Bitcoin and the dollar. Then let's check out the Bitcoin chart itself, see if there's any sentiment changes, how the price action's looking, if we've broken out the consolidation or not. And then finally, let's go over any asset changes within the portfolios and any sort of news driven or technical perspectives which made me make those decisions to do so. So let's dive in. Okay, so Bitcoin, let's do a quick take. I'm no professional market analyst by any stretch. I've got tons of good people you can follow actually on the Cryptocurrency wiki page, which provide really good fundamental and technical takes on the market. Highly recommend following them. But I do know a thing or two about trend trade and support resistance level market structure. It's how I trade for the past 4 or so years. It's a lot easier to trade macro time frames, swing trading, than it is to day trade, which I don't do. So here we are on the chart, bull market on the left hand side. We go into the Coinbase listing. In hindsight, so the news event, our first lower low into our first lower high, which was complacency bounce in combination with China FUD. We went into down only sadness, and all the bulls had to go to the soup kitchen because no one had any money anymore. Now we're in this kind of choppy crab market they call, but it's quite clear to see, although it is very choppy, there's still a bearish directional bias on this. This pump up here above the range was actually around when Saylor from MicroStrategy was buying, I think, 500 million Bitcoin or so. But even this move just got completely faded. You know, in a bear market, all these fundamentally bullish news just get sold into as kind of exit liquidity. And we've just been trending down. But on the flip side, we have this kind of ironclad support. And this is labeled plunge control. We have a weekly range. And I'll just go on the weekly chart to illustrate how I got that range. I used the weekly closes from our previous consolidation back here. And you can see how we've kind of been, you know, when we go above it, we get sold into, we go below it, we get bought up into it. Flicking back to the 3-day here. And then I've also illustrated just the lower candle ranges on the 3-day and the daily. That is pretty much the sort of the last stand for the bulls. But at the moment, that has been respected. You know, whenever we drop down here, someone's on plunge control, someone wants Bitcoin, bidding it right back up, and we get these strong wicks going up. So there is demand here. And on the flip side at the top here, there is still supply wanting to dump, wanting to distribute the Bitcoin they have. And that's what gives you a choppy market. So objectively, my analysis using just simple market structure and obviously the momentum indicators I use one directly on these candles. I made this myself to illustrate trend. I have this momentum indicator down here, which is constantly trending down, making lower lows. We're in a bear market, basically. Obviously, that is bad news for the portfolios. So it's about taking that information and making sure you have a strategy for both outcomes of the market. What's our bullish case? It's basically if we spring from here again and we start forming some sort of accumulation pattern which sends us higher to an all-time retest. And this is drawn terribly, but you know, you could say it could look like a bit of a wick-off accumulation pattern, and that would be very bullish. When Bitcoin goes into an obvious accumulation pattern and starts setting higher highs, really good for altcoins, money starts to flow back into the market, and we would expect our two portfolios to do very well all the way up to the all-time high retest. It's too early to say what would happen beyond that. On the flip side, if we do have a bearish continuation, and that is not off the cards at all, we have this big crash into consolidation with a bearish sort of directional bias, and then we can easily have continuation here. It would look programmed. I mean, if this did happen and you zoomed out and later down the line, you know, the market did something like that, it would look like, oh right, well, that was obvious, you know, from the weekly levels here. And you know, I should really use the line tool, but I can't be bothered. You know, from this area here, which is around 20k, if it's tapped it and went back up, you'd be like, huh, okay, that kind of made sense in hindsight. This stuff can happen 100%. We could have bearish continuation, which would be very bad for both portfolios. With this chart in our last video, we presented this. It's kind of following the bearish case right now. And the plan was that if we broke down, we wouldn't sell immediately. You usually have some sort of relief before continuation, maybe like a bearish retest of support. That would be where I'm looking to move some allocation of both portfolios into more risk-off assets. And also the reason why I wait for confirmation as well is because we might come down here on the weekly, and then before it closes, we might just wick straight back up. And if I've allocated into stables or risk-off assets, then I've essentially been shaken out. So the TLDR here is we're going to watch the weekly close, and we're going to use that information to give higher probability to these kind of trade plans we've created. So that's the quick take on Bitcoin. Let's move on to the portfolios. Okay, so the blue chip index, let's have a look. Currently we're allocated into Sushi, Compound, Yearn and Alpha Finance. And I settled on this allocation for now. From our previous episode, we had a really nice pump in DeFi, and I made some really nice rotational plays. Compound pumps a lot based on some news around its new product, Compound Treasury. Aave had some news around institutional pools that it's releasing. So both projects are kind of bridging DeFi and CeFi, very bullish. And effectively, I made a few trades from the compound position I had, which was going up the hardest. I then rotated the profits on that into Aave and then into Alpha Finance, and kind of captured a bit more in each subsequent move, which was really great in squeezing as much gains as I could from that move as possible. Now, obviously, in the allocation now, we're missing Aave and a few others that were included prior, like Uniswap. And the thesis behind that is, I now know that when the market bounced, these tokens bounced the hardest. You know, out of lending and borrowing, for example, Compound bounced the hardest. I know out of Uniswap and Sushi bounced the hardest. I know Alpha Finance bounced really hard. And so the thesis going forward is that although we're in a bit of a bearish trend now, if history repeats or rhymes or whatever, then these tokens should bounce the hardest afterwards, and I'll be positioned accordingly with a more concentrated portfolio around them to capture that upside. So if we just have a quick look at these charts and how we're doing, you know, Sushi USD, if I can spell. Looks like we're forming a bit of a double bottom here. Too early to say right now whether that is going to be a bounce of some significance, or if that's going to just be faded into some bearish structure. But right now, this double bottom's holding, so that's looking quite good. As for Compound, Compound made an absolutely insane move. You know, the move this made was pretty exceptional. If I can actually get the tool measurer out. The move it made was around 170%, which is enormous, based, you know, in a few days. Pretty crazy stuff. So this, not sure where it's going right now. Hopefully some sort of consolidation pattern and up. But it could very well be we're just entering this sort of previous range region, but being rejected, maybe lower. Who knows? Too early to say right now, again. And also it'll be very dependent on what Bitcoin's doing as well. Alpha also had an insane run. Of around 200% or so. But same story, will this be part of a larger accumulation and up? Will this just be a relief rally into more downside? It's impossible to say. What we do have now is some more clear defined trend lines though. Maybe that can be used to contribute towards our sort of trade plan, whether we're going down and where we'd find resistance possibly. Who knows? And the final one is Yan, if I can find it. Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi looks pretty weak to be honest. It's kind of got this bouncing rubber ball structure, which is bearish. If we break down, we'll have to see, because all these charts are all very correlated. If Bitcoin finds a bottom and starts setting higher highs, you can pretty much be damn sure we're going to start following suit on altcoins, and then you'll look at this in hindsight and be like, oh wow, that was the reaccumulation of a lifetime. And if Bitcoin dumps, you might, like I said, have this rubber ball bouncing breakdown continuation pattern, and you'll be in hindsight saying, oh, that was obvious. But at the time, it's very hard to predict. You just have to use a probability based approach of what you think might happen the most, and act accordingly. As for the performance of the blue chip index, you know, I chose to remain 100% exposed to crypto throughout this whole move. So against the dollar, I'm not too fussed. We're still, you know, from inception, $100. We're now at 129, so we're 29% up from a peak of 76%. That was on the big run. We made a few great trades, and you know, in the dollar terms, it kind of followed the fate of Bitcoin. So we've drawn down, but still in profit. What I really care about is have I outperformed Bitcoin, and we have. Like, we're still outperforming Bitcoin by a nice margin as well. You know, from 3,300 sats, we're on 4,100 now. This is still looking pretty good. I would say this is a nice, consistent outperformance right now. You know, we had the surge up, and we haven't just dumped back down. We are leveling off a bit here, but if strength returns to the market, I expect this to go up and will continue outperforming. So very happy with the blue chip index right now. Good performance. Innovation index wise, not much to say on this since last time. We had a great pump from the index cooperative where there was some news around treasury diversification, and that was a bit of a bullish catalyst for price. But as for changes, I think I sold NFTX and also a little bit of the gains from the index cooperative pump and put them into the metaverse index. And the thesis behind that is the NFTX token is just a single asset in the NFT ecosystem. And although it did very well, I don't have enough conviction and knowledge to really back that thesis that that token is just going to consistently outperform and be representative of the NFT sort of trend. So instead I went into this metaverse index, which is another set built on token sets, but instead it has like over 10 NFT based tokens wrapped into one token, the MVI. And that allows me to get complete exposure to the NFT ecosystem as a whole. I don't have to have any bias or conviction on a single project per se, but just as the ecosystem as a whole. And that ended up being a fantastic move, because the MVI, this is against the dollar, and MVI since the 26th or so has gone up 147%. So similar moves to DeFi, to be honest. And against Bitcoin, if I divide the price by the Bitcoin price to get the ratio, we can see that the NFT ecosystem against Bitcoin has done exceptionally well. 140% gains against Bitcoin just represents that the NFT ecosystem right now has significantly outperformed Bitcoin. So that's it for changes. Current allocation is Index, Metaverse Index, and Rook. And Rook hasn't done much, not really worth going into that right now. The question is, did we outperform? Let's go there now. And against USD, similarly to the blue chip index, how I chose to remain 100% exposed to crypto for this move, which basically means I'm interested in outperforming Bitcoin at this time. And, from inception, but just for reference, this started at $100, we're still at 137, which means we've made 37% gains since inception still, although this did peak at a pretty crazy number, which is 191, which is 91%, almost at 2 times on the portfolio. So all I care about, did I outperform Bitcoin since launch? Am I still outperforming Bitcoin? And, for the innovation index, actually, we're 3,300 sats and now 4,300, which is outperforming the blue chip index slightly, but we've taken a lot more risk here. So I'd actually probably like to see slightly better performance in that. You can see these pretty volatile swings. We had this massive launch up, and the innovation index was kind of laughably outperforming Bitcoin at that point. But with smaller caps, and I think I went through this in the last episode, when the market draws down, these smaller caps get hammered. Usually they take a bigger drawdown in USD versus the dollar, which means the Bitcoin ratio goes down. But on the same vein, when Bitcoin starts to present a more bullish market structure, which we went through earlier, these tokens can go ballistic. And as we saw here, the first signs of reversal, these tokens really reverse, So in all, happy with the innovation index. Wanted to retain a bit more of our gains, if I'm completely honest, to really warrant the added risk we're taking with these tokens. But in any case, I think if we do start seeing any sort of bullish reversal signs, whether that look like that or whatever, the innovation index would start reversing pretty hard again. So we'll just have to wait and see. You may have noticed a lot of these altcoin charts look really similar now. We've started to get a bit more clearer market structure amongst all of these. You can start drawing some really nice sort of trends. I can literally go across all these DeFi coins and draw the same trend. So you can see how correlated the market is. And in my opinion, it's very useful for swing traders and stuff to take note of these levels, because you can use them for where you take profit if you've longed something, bearish retest and whatnot. And also if we drop back down, you might have another long entry on the bottom of the trend line. But really, for all the altcoin charts and the performance of my 2 portfolios, which are fully exposed to altcoins, make no mistake that the fate of Bitcoin, at least in dollar value across the portfolios and altcoins and everything, is really going to be indicative of the short-term trend. Whether we do the accumulation pattern into breakup, or if we do the kind of breakdown into bearish retest into nuke, let's keep watching. Weekly close is the one to watch. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, just consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, as it helps a bunch. If you want to talk about the crypto portfolios a bit more, or the crypto ecosystem as a whole, whether you're a trader or into NFTs or whatever, come join our Discord server. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can do that. Anyone's welcome, new or experienced, whatever. And let's see how the portfolios do over the next week or so, and we'll check in again. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.